She tried to erase me from birthdays, from memories, from my own family. But when a DNA test shattered the illusion she'd built, I realized the truth. My son's perfect wife wasn't a loving mother, she was a con artist with a pattern, and I was next on her list to eliminate. But not this time. Not without a fight. I was unwrapping my turkey sandwich when I saw them through the break room window, two people in navy blazers with clipboards standing outside my cubicle. My heart didn't race. It just knew. Tessa Carmichael had finally done it. The compliance officers were rifling through my workspace like they owned it. One was photographing my computer monitor. The other was opening my desk drawers with gloved hands. They didn't look around. Didn't ask. They weren't here to talk, they were here to document. I took a slow breath and set my sandwich down. Walked back in with steady steps. "Mrs. Patterson?" the woman said, flashing a badge. "We need you to come with us." Of course they did. They led me to a quiet conference room and said I was being placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation into a data breach. I listened calmly. I nodded, but inside, a scream was clawing up my throat. I hadn't done it. I'd worked at that firm for 21 years. Payroll, benefits, confidentiality protocols are practically embedded in my DNA. I knew better, and more than that, I cared. That job had been the only thing keeping me steady after my husband died. It was how I paid for Elliot's college, how I helped with Meadow's maternity leave, how I spoiled my grandbabies with weekend trips to the zoo. Now it was being yanked out from under me. No explanation, no warning. The only thing they gave me was a cardboard box and a quiet escort to the elevator. At first, I thought it had to be a mistake, a rogue email, a corrupted file, something that could be cleared up quickly. But as the days dragged on and HR stopped returning my calls, I started to understand. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had set me up. Someone who wanted me out of the way, and the more I thought about it, the more everything pointed to Meadow. It had started with small, subtle shifts in the family dynamic. Missed invitations, rescheduled dinners, whispers between her and Elliot. When they thought I wasn't looking, I brushed it off for months. Then came the cruise. My 65th birthday. I had everything planned. Cake, decorations, even a silly little slideshow of family photos. Elliot promised they'd be there. Meadow even offered to bring dessert. But 2 days before the party, Elliot called. "Mom, Meadow surprised us with a family cruise. We leave tomorrow." "I'm so sorry. We didn't realize the dates overlapped, didn't realize." A 10-day Caribbean cruise was booked 6 weeks in advance. I spent my birthday alone, eating store-bought cake and watching old home videos, and when they got back, Meadow posted dozens of photos on social media. Family photos. The kids are building sandcastles. Elliot is in a lounge chair. Meadow in a sun hat, looking like a queen. I wasn't in a single one. That was when David knocked on my door. I hadn't seen him in years. Tall, polished, nervous in a way that made me suspicious. He held an envelope in one hand, a worn photo in the other. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "I'm David Chan, and I need to talk to you about your grandson." He laid out the timeline on my kitchen table. "Tommy was born 7 years ago," he said. "Meadow and I were together until shortly before that. She left me without a word. No note, no closure. I thought she'd moved on." He slid the photo across the table. A baby, chubby cheeks, almond-shaped eyes. My son. I've suspected for years, but I didn't have proof until now. He opened the envelope. DNA results. Certified, conclusive, 99.7 match. I stared at the paper until the numbers blurred. My breath caught in my chest. "I don't want to take him away," David said quietly. "I just want the truth. And I think you deserve it too." He was right. Because this wasn't just about paternity. This was about a woman who'd spent 7 years constructing a perfect lie and using my family as her foundation. Meadow Martinez wasn't who she claimed to be. And now that the truth was surfacing, I finally understood why she'd worked so hard to erase me, but she'd underestimated the one thing I'd never lose: the will to protect my family. Elliot never questioned Tommy's parentage. If Meadow could give him a biological child, he'd be less likely to doubt that Tommy was his too. And it would cement their relationship even further. I felt sick. Everything about my son's marriage, his family, his life for the past 7 years had been orchestrated by a woman who saw him not as a person to love, but as a resource to exploit. And she'd used children, innocent children, as tools in her manipulation. Tommy doesn't know, does he? I asked. David shook his head. Of course not. He's 7 years old. As far as he's concerned, Elliot is his father and always has been. And Emma? She just thinks she has a big brother who looks a little different from her. Kids don't question these things, but adults do, or they should. And now, I finally understood why Meadow had worked so hard to make me irrelevant. A grandmother who spent time with her grandchildren, who was present in their lives, might eventually notice that Tommy looked nothing like his supposed father. Might start asking questions about resemblances, about genetic traits that didn't add up. I turned to David. Why now? Why tell me this now? He stared at his hands for a long moment, then looked up. Because I realized something when I saw those cruise photos. Meadow isn't just destroying my relationship with my son. She's destroying yours too. And if we don't stop her, she's going to keep doing it. Doing what exactly? Pulling back from Elliot's friends. Keeping him isolated. Making him dependent on her for everything. She's teaching the kids to see him as the only parent that matters. Tommy barely talks about you anymore. I've seen it when I watched him at the park. It's like she's erasing you from his memory. His words hit hard. I thought about how Tommy no longer ran to hug me like he used to. He glanced at Meadow before speaking to me. I thought he was just growing up, but maybe it wasn't that at all. She's going to discard Elliot eventually, David continued. Just like she did with me. Just like she's done before. But first, she'll make sure he has nothing left, no friends, no family, no support system. When she moves on, he'll be completely alone. I closed my eyes, imagining my son's future. Isolated, abandoned, maybe even broke. And the children, God, the children caught in the middle of a game they didn't even know they were playing. What do you want me to do? David stood up, gathering the papers and photos. Help me save our family. Because that's what we are, Mrs. Patterson. Family. You're Tommy's grandmother in every way that matters, even if you don't share DNA. And I'm not going to let Meadow destroy that just because she's afraid of the truth. He handed me a business card. Think about it, but don't think too long. They'll be back from the cruise in a few days. And when they are, Meadow's going to be watching for any sign that you're a threat again. If we're going to act, it has to be soon. After he left, I sat in silence, holding the DNA results and staring at that business card. The house was quiet to quiet, but for the first time in months, that silence didn't feel empty. It felt like the calm before a storm, because Meadow Martinez, or Margaret Winters, or whatever her real name was, had made a critical mistake. She thought she could erase me, but I wasn't gone yet. I called Elliot 3 days after they returned from their cruise. My voice was steady, every word rehearsed. Hi, sweetheart. I was wondering if we could all get together for dinner this weekend. I have something important I'd like to discuss with you and Meadow. There was a pause. Is everything okay, Mom? You sound serious. Everything's fine. I've just been doing some thinking while you were away. I think it's time we had a real family conversation about us, about the future. A longer pause. I could hear Meadow's voice in the background, low and insistent. When Elliot returned, his tone was more cautious. Meadow wants to know what kind of conversation. She's concerned you might be upset about the cruise timing. Of course, she was. Her instincts were too sharp. She knew something had shifted. Tell Meadow I'm not upset, I said evenly. I just believe families should communicate openly. Saturday evening would be perfect. I'll cook. I'll check with Meadow and get back to you. It took 2 hours for him to call again. Saturday works. 6 o'clock, perfect, I said. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone. That was Thursday. On Friday, David and I met again. We reviewed the documents, practiced the delivery. The manila folder on my kitchen counter held everything: DNA results, Margaret Winters' marriage certificates, a timeline that told the true story. I made Elliot's favorite meal, If this were our last family dinner, I wanted it to start as a memory of warmth. Saturday came, gray and wet. I set the table with my good china, the same dishes I'd planned to use for my birthday dinner 2 weeks ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. They arrived promptly at 6. Meadow wore a flowing cream-colored dress, styled to perfection. She looked like the epitome of a loving wife and mother. Tommy burst through the door first, full of 7-year-old excitement. "Grandma Loretta, I learned to swim on the cruise. Wanna see my doggy paddle?" My heart clenched. "Maybe after dinner, sweetheart. Go wash up." Emma followed quietly, holding a doll. She was more reserved, but still let me kiss her forehead before disappearing to wash her hands. Elliot looked thinner, tired. "Work's been brutal," he said with a shrug. "But Meadow keeps telling me to find a better balance. Early retirement," Meadow chimed in. "Travel more. Family time." At 38? That wasn't balanced. That was dependence. "How wonderful," I said with a smile. That's related to what I wanted to talk about. During dinner, the children talked about the cruise. Meadow played the attentive mother, but I watched her closely. She subtly redirected Tommy when he mentioned missing me. She silenced Emma's curiosity. She managed the entire dinner like a performance. After the children finished, I suggested they play in the living room while the adults talked. They should get going soon. Meadow objected. "School night. This won't take long," I said, firmer, "and it will affect their routine quite a bit." She hesitated. I saw it then, the flicker of fear. Back in the dining room, I placed a manila folder beside my coffee. "So," Elliot said, holding Meadow's hand. "What's this all about?" I breathed in deeply. "About honesty. About family. About truth." Meadow's smile tightened. I opened the folder and set the DNA results between us. "These show that you are not Tommy's biological father." Silence. Elliot stared. Meadow froze. "A paternity test?" he whispered. "Why?" "Because there's a 99.7% chance David Chen is Tommy's biological father." Meadow shot up from her chair. "This is insane, Loretta. Sit down, Margaret." She stumbled. Elliot turned to me, confused. "Margaret?" I laid out the documents. "Her real name is Margaret Winters. She's been married twice before. Same pattern. Lies. Isolation. Control." "That's not true," Meadow said, voice shaking. "Elliot, your mother is Tommy was born 7 months after you met." I interrupted. "Not premature. Right on time." Elliot picked up the results, his hands trembling. "This can't be real. David found you 3 months ago," I said. "He's been waiting, hoping you'd see what she's doing. What she's done to all of us." Meadow backed toward the doorway. "Think about our life, Elliot. Our family. Our family built on a lie," he said, voice cracking. "Our son, who isn't my son. He is, in every way that matters, based on a lie." Elliot slammed his hand on the table. "Everything has been a lie." There was laughter from the other room. "Innocent. Oblivious." "There's more," I said, sliding the records forward. "She's done this before." "You're not the first." Elliot stared down at the evidence, lost. "The cruise. Your birthday. That was deliberate, wasn't it?" Meadow was silent. "You isolated me from my mother, from everyone. That's what this has always been about," I said. "Keeping you blind." Elliot turned to her, voice breaking. "Did you ever love me? Or was I just convenient?" For once, Meadow had no answer. "Daddy, can we have ice cream?" Tommy's voice called. Elliot closed his eyes. A tear slid down his cheek. "What do I tell them?" "We'll figure it out," I said, taking his hand. "Together, as a family." Meadow turned toward the door, but I called after her. "Margaret." She paused, one hand on the frame, but didn't turn around. "David isn't going to disappear this time. And neither am I. If you try to run with the children, we will find you. If you try to manipulate this situation or hurt these kids to protect yourself, we will stop you. Your days of controlling this family are over." She walked out without another word, leaving behind the sound of children's laughter and the wreckage of 7 years of lies. But strangely, I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel powerless. I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. 6 months later, my kitchen smelled of cinnamon and roast chicken, and the sound of small feet thundered down the hallway. "Grandma." We brought dessert. Tommy yelled, In here, sweetheart, I called, smiling as he burst into the kitchen. Holding a bakery box bigger than his head, Emma trailed behind, holding a small bouquet of daisies. "These are for you," she said, shyly, reaching up. "Daddy said yellow is your favorite." My heart softened as I knelt to hug her. "They're perfect, sweetheart." "Thank you." Elliot appeared in the doorway, healthier than I'd seen him in years. The haunted look was gone. Behind him was David, still cautious but slowly finding his place. "Something smells incredible," Elliot said, kissing my cheek. "Is that your famous apple pie?" "Tommy specifically requested it," I said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Along with mashed potatoes and your favorite chicken," Tommy beamed. "That's my favorite too, just like Daddy's." The ease with which he called both Elliot and David Daddy still made my heart swell. The children had adapted to this new version of family with remarkable resilience. Tommy called Elliot Daddy and David Daddy Dave. Emma accepted it all without question. David placed a bottle of wine on the counter. "How can I help?" "You can set the table," I said. "The good china is in the cabinet." It hadn't been easy to get here. There were weeks of therapy, painful questions, court hearings. Meadow had voluntarily relinquished custody in exchange for avoiding prosecution. Then, like a shadow fleeing the light, she vanished again. Tommy had cried for days. Emma clung to Elliot and me like a shadow. There were tantrums, nightmares, but eventually, there was laughter again too. Elliot had moved back into the house. David rented a nearby apartment. The children went back and forth like a well-rehearsed routine, each visit strengthening their sense of safety. "Grandma," Tommy whispered as he tugged on my apron. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." He cupped his mouth to my ear. "I'm glad you found Daddy Dave. Now I have the most daddies of anyone in my class." I laughed, holding him close. "I'm glad too, sweetheart." He leaned in closer. "I'm glad Mommy Meadow went away. She was always mad." My heart broke and healed at once. Even children knew when love was real. Over dinner, we talked easily. David shared Tommy's latest soccer goal. Elliot described Emma's dance class. The conversation flowed like it had never had with Meadow present. "I got a call from my lawyer," Elliot said later as we cleared the table. "The divorce is final." "How do you feel?" "Relieved. Grateful. I'll always regret not seeing the truth sooner, especially what she did to you. You trusted someone you loved," I said, gently. "That's not a flaw, Elliot. That's being human." David dried the last dish. "Any word from her?" Elliot shook his head. "Nothing. Her lawyer said she wants no contact." "Then let's be grateful for the peace," I said, later. As the children dozed off in the living room, the three of us sat around the table with coffee and pie. David stirred sugar into his cup. "I've been thinking about Tommy's last name." Elliot looked up. "What about it?" "He's been Patterson his whole life. That shouldn't change." "But I was thinking of changing mine to David Patterson Chan, so he and I share something. So he still feels connected to you, Elliot." Elliot blinked, stunned. "You'd do that?" David nodded. "Families don't have to be broken. They can be complicated and still be whole." Elliot reached out to shake his hand. "I think that's perfect." As David prepared to take the kids for their overnight visit, I pulled him aside. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For saving my family. For telling me the truth when disappearing would have been easier." David smiled. "You were losing your family just like I was. But we stopped her. And look what we built instead." After they left, I sat in the living room. The house was no longer silent. It was full of echoes of hope, of second chances. My phone buzzed. A message from Elliot. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. The kids want to do this every Sunday." I told them it's up to Grandma. I typed back. "Every Sunday sounds perfect." His reply was instant. "This is what real families do." I looked at the photo on the table. The five of us at the zoo, crowded together, smiles real and wide. Not the family I imagined, but the one I needed. Stronger, truer, ours.